Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another lecture number 4. Uh, Congratulations, this is the fourth week of the semester. You've made it through a month. Um, Today, if we look at the syllabus, right, we're covering chapter 4, or lecture 4, and then chapter 2 of Kagan. And then this week on Friday, the scannable resume is due. So I want to start by talking about Chapter 2 of Kagan, because I think that's important for starting out our discussion. Um, again, like last week or the week before last, I'm not going to give you a detailed summary of the book. I think that I want you to make sure that you're reading that on your own and making your own impressions and discovering what you think is important. But I did want to bring out a couple of points from the book. So, one of the things that Kagan makes clear, and we have to understand that he is a social scientist. So, when he approaches this topic, he is approaching it from the biases of a social scientist. But one of the things that he makes clear is that the natural sciences have dominated the other cultures in terms of a war over things like funding, um, and things like sort of a tradition of exactitude, right? The public widely considers the methods of science um, much more rigorous than uh, the other two academic disciplines or the other two academic cultures. And so this forces some of the professional organizations of the other cultures to sort of try to align themselves with the sciences, um, and in order to secure funding. So, an example, we look at the STEM building here on the NDSU campus. Uh, that building is a very expensive and very lovely building, and it's enough to make the other academic disciplines wonder, hey, I wonder what happens if we adopt some of the methods that the natural sciences are using. Do we get buildings like that? Do we get the funding boosts that we have, especially if we think about the departments like theater, who haven't had a facility upgrade in a long time, right? Um, it really begins to make one wonder, you know, should we adopt more of what the sciences are doing? Um, but I want you to think about what is lost when the other cultures do this. So the one thing that should be becoming clear is that the three different academic cultures have different ways of doing things. They're after different things. They're not all after the same sorts of evidentiary results. And so when we imply or when we impose the natural sciences methods on, say, humanities piece of research, what are we losing in translation? Um, if the humanities developed their own methods in part to deal with the problems that they had in their field, and the things that they were after uh, in their field, as far as standards of evidence, as far as the questions they ask. Uh, if they develop those for a reason, what is lost when they begin to adopt natural sciences methods? Generally, we can find that most projects that succeed very well have experts in each of the academic cultures who uh, are really using the expertise that they have in order to um, make the project work in lots of different directions and accomplish different goals. Uh, but when we have people adopting the methods of other disciplines, those expertises disappear, right? And they're replaced by a sort of pseudo expertise, a pseudo academic uh, sort of farce, really, uh, that is really down to seeking money, right? So I want you to think about the impact of STEM's primacy on your own field. What could your field do with a new building or two new buildings, or what could your field do with you know an influx of extra grant money or something like that? Or if you are working in the natural sciences, what do you think the increased popularity of the sciences over the natural years over the years has done to your field? Do you think that everybody in your field is there for the right reason, or are there some people who are there chasing money, or chasing grants, or chasing a career that they're not necessarily talented at, but that they are being forced into because it's the most financially secure option for them? These are all questions to consider from chapter 2. So I do encourage you to read that and respond to it in your composition book, and we'll talk more about those prompts at the end of the lecture today. But the other thing that we're doing is looking at resumes still this week. I do want to cover some of the basics on resumes so that we can make sure that you're turning in the best possible product for this week's resume that's due on Friday. Um, so we've imposed this criteria on your resume that it should be a scannable resume. That is, that the resume should have a first audience be a scanner, right? So that imposes certain formatting guidelines on us. Things like having a serifed font and not using bullets or lines, and using white space that separates the text from each other. Um, but what is a resume anyway? Um, so this is fundamental to all resumes, not just a scannable resume. Resume is a list, basically, of the things that you've done, right? A list of jobs you've held, of experiences you've had that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. You should have a different resume every time you apply for a job. Now, I know that it's pretty common practice to have a standard resume that you use and use that to apply to all jobs pretty much regardless of what the job is. But that's not what a specialist does, right? So when you are a specialist, you have to tailor each resume to a job because there are specifics to each job, and you want to make sure that you are addressing those so that the employer knows that you are a professional in that field. Yes. So your resume should list everything you've done that is relevant to that particular job. So whether that's volunteer experience or uh, work experience or organizations that you've been a part of or education or any of those things would all be relevant to a job search. So the other thing you want to do is try to keep it under one page, or one page full, uh, or under two. Um, 2 pages is getting to be a lot for a resume, especially a scannable resume. Um, Generally, one is best, but if you must put two on, make sure that the second page is absolutely necessary to convey all that you need to convey in that resume. So, what is the goal? Well, the goal is to get your job, right? So, anything that's on there that doesn't explain something about how you're qualified for the job, right, should probably not be on there. Yeah, makes sense. Uh, so, who are its audiences? Yes, the scanner is your first audience with a scannable resume. But you do have to convince the second audience as well, which is the HR professional who views your resume or your peers, depending on the field that you're going into. So it's important that you maintain in your mind that eventually you will have human eyes on your resume if you've done the scannable part right. So make it nice looking even for human eyes after ensuring that it will scan well. Um, how can you make your resume stand out? Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Some people have ideas about that that may lead you astray. Uh, so let's look at some examples of what I'm talking about here. So this is a resume template that I found on a resume site um, that was going to help you build a wonderful looking resume. So you've got Jane Roe, and here's her picture, and here's what she is, and you've got symbols here that tell you all about her. She's got her LinkedIn and her Skype on there. All kinds of awesome, crazy formatting. There's only one problem: the machine won't know what the heck it is, right? The machine won't download the picture. It won't understand the lines or the brackets or anything like that. It won't know what this is. It won't know what these are, right? So while this looks very pretty to hand to somebody, uh, it's not a wonderfully professional resume, and certainly not a scannable resume, because the scanner won't know what the heck is going on with it, and it certainly won't keep all that formatting. So, this resume may lead you astray if you were to use it. Now, there are appropriate circumstances to use this, and this is when you are handing your resume directly to a person at a business. So here in North Dakota, that's the case more often than not, that you go in and you see the hiring manager and you hand them this resume and they're very impressed by it, right? That's wonderful. If you can do that, great. Uh, but increasingly, most employers are putting their job ads online, and indeed they're compelled to by internal rules, right? They have to put their jobs out there and get the best candidates. Yeah. So when you're considering that, it's best to have a scannable resume. So this one is not it. Yeah. Let's look at this one here. So John Doe has given us a good format here, right? Um, we have his education, College of Design, Bachelor of Science in Graphic Design, cumulative GPA 3.93, Dean's List. Okay, so with the GPA, I do not recommend putting it on there unless it is something like that, the 3.93 or Dean's List or whatever. If it's below 3.7, just leave it off. Nobody cares. Yeah? Work experience. So, American Eagle, sales associate, city state, dates. This is a really good format, right? Um, but a couple of things make it not scannable. We've got this double line here. Computer may or may not read that. Got the dots between the information and the header. Yeah. Got an objective. I'm not really a big fan of the objective. My guess is that if you have an objective, it's to get a job. Yeah. Probably the one you're applying for. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the objective. Um, and then the bulleted lists. So you could have those lists without bullets. You don't need the bullets there. Um, and those will just confuse the scanner. So there's no need to have them there. Yeah. So yet another example of a resume that's really not quite right. Here we have John Smith, right? John Smith has written a summary of himself here. Yeah, so if we zoom in, you can read some of that. Administrative assistant with 6 years experience, flawless preparation of presentations. Flawless is a strong word. I am suspect of words like flawless, right? I'm not a big fan of the word flawless, right? Because it doesn't mean what you think it means, right? Flawless means absolutely no mistakes, and there's nothing in the world like that. Yeah. Preparation of presentations, preparing facility reports, and maintaining the utmost confidentiality. This is BA in history and expertise in Microsoft Excel. So this whole summary thing, I don't think you need that. It's just my thing. Yeah. They've got a similar format to the previous one we just looked at. But they're leading with their professional experience because it looks like their professional experience might be a little longer than their education, right? He does write graduated cum laude, which is 3.7, I believe. Bilingual in Spanish and English, that's a pretty important one to put on there if you are bilingual. Not if you've had a couple of years in college, but if you are actually bilingual, right? Put that on there for sure. Uh, Web and tech savvy. I don't really know what that means. Yeah. Because lots of people say they are web and tech savvy, and what they mean is they have a Facebook account, right? So I'm not sure I'm on board with that one. You may have to be more specific about which kind of savvy you have. Yeah. In terms of being scannable, not great. He's got the blue text, which the machine may or may not recognize as actual text. And the lines, a couple of lines here, and the bulleted list, right? So, what am I looking for then? Well, I've got a few key things, and I'm going to put this on Blackboard for your reference. Um, but things that I think that you should include, I do like the online profile URL, right? Consistent branding, right? So if you look at what's going on here, you see Joan E. Job Seeker. Email is Joan at jobseeker.com, and the LinkedIn profile is Joan E. Jobseeker, right? LinkedIn.com/Joan E. Jobseeker. So that's a consistent brand, right? Now, this has an executive summary that I think is actually helpful. Meticulous financial analyst who understands complex assignments, meets tight deadlines, and delivers superior performance. Possesses practical knowledge in corporate finance and financial analysis. Applies strong financial planning and analytical skills to inform senior management of key trends, and reduce company expenditures by more than $255,000. Operates with a strong sense of urgency and thrives in a fast-paced setting. Fluent in Spanish. Core competencies include these, right? These are keywords, essentially, right? So if you've ever done a web search, you know that you need keywords that are relevant. So it's a good thing to have, right? Um, Reverse chronological order, that is starting with your most recent job and then working backwards from there, is a very good layout for a resume, so I encourage you to use that as well. Um, Company description. Uh, I'm not sure that you need the company description, so uh, generally speaking, if the company is well known, people will know it. Um, and you can explain things if you need to. If you're going to use a company description, do uh, do make sure it's very short, right? Um, so here at 8, they've used bullet points. Again, I'm not sure that you need bullet points, especially in a scannable resume, because it can confuse the machine. But do think about how you separate those points from the body of the summary there. But these bullet points should quantify your achievements if you have numbers to back that up. So you see, this person is saying generated approximately $452,000 in annual savings, right? If you do something like that for a company, definitely tell somebody about that on your resume. Yeah. Um, Result and cause format, right? So they started off with conducted financial analysis to support senior leadership with developing the business segment's long-range financial plan of more than 30 billion over the next 5 years. Right. So there's a result that happened. Right. Generated approximately 452,000 in annual savings. And then the cause by employing a new procedure which streamlined the business vendors relationship. Improve spending reports to enhance uh, clarity of expenses and increased efficiency for 10 different groups. So if you've done something good and had a good result, put the result first and then say, by doing this, right? I accomplished the publication of 15 articles by writing 18 grants so that we could have a full-time article writing staff, right? That kind of thing. So 13, no pronouns, right? Within the first 3 weeks in the organization, took on and organized one of the company's largest clients, valued at 1.2 billion and more than 100 money managers, right? Um, I'm actually not sure what they're talking about here. In general, avoid pronouns that are gendered, right? Because you won't always know the gender of the people that you're working with. There is white space here that makes things readable. You've got the education listed at the bottom, right? That's if education isn't your strong suit. Definitely list your professional experience first, right? Uh, there's no references available on request section here. I think they know that they can request references, so you don't really need to add that in. Yeah. It's just an extra step that they have to take. Uh, I think that generally, if you're going to have references on your resume, just list them, right? You don't need to see references available on request. Um, there's no photo up here. The photo is not something that the machine can read, right? And there's no header or footer to confuse the machine with different macros that automatically do things on the document that may or may not be read well by the machine, right? No crazy fonts or colors. It's just black and white. This person has chosen a sans serif font, which again we've talked about. You shouldn't use a sans serif font, but these are just some of the things to consider as you're writing the resume. And these little red points of interest are helpful in doing that. So I think that should be a good description of what exactly we're doing. right? The things that make you stand out in writing a resume. It's not having blue text. It's not having your picture up in the corner. It's not having cool infographics or buttons. It's really just having some basic considerate text that is bold where it needs to be bold and italicized where it needs to be italicized and spaced where it needs to be spaced. But then also just making your job qualifications stand out by having adequate white space, by putting things where they need to be, where they are expected to be, right? And by uh, not really applying for jobs that you're not qualified for. Yeah? Applying only for jobs where they're like, hey, I want to hire that person because look at what they've done, right? Um, so if you follow some of these basic steps, you should be very successful in writing the resume. And we'll go on to show how that then is married to the successful execution of the cover letter next week. So, writing prompts for this week. I would like you to summarize chapter 2, right? Tell me the important things that you're drawing out of chapter 2 of Kagan. And then I would also like you to talk about how you feel about your resume, your qualifications, um, and whether or not you think that you stand out for the jobs to which you'll be applying for when you finish your degree. So, once again, that is summary of chapter 2 of Kagan and how you feel about your resume and what you can do on your resume to stand out for the jobs that you want. So, that will conclude this week's lecture, and I hope you are staying out of the weather. And we'll see you next week. Farewell.